And before we get going, here's a word about our sponsors. SDHQ Motorsports is a powerhouse 30,000 square foot facility with 45 family members reporting for duty. This single owner, single location business is based out of Gilbert, Arizona. It can handle anything from a hot rod, daily driver, pre-runner, race vehicle, half-track or Kugelwagen, or just about any other project you need help with. Their skilled staff with hundreds of years of combined experience eats, sleeps, and breathes performance. So go check them out at sdhqmotorsports.com or check them out on Insta at sdhqmotorsports. The We Happy Few 506 podcast is brought to you in partnership with the Gettysburg Museum of History, home of the Major Dick Winters collection and the largest assortment of authentic Band of Brothers artifacts in the world. Visit the free museum at 219 Baltimore Street in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, or at www.gettysburgmuseumofhistory.com, and on the YouTube channel, The History Underground, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Hello, and welcome along to another We Happy Few 506 podcast. Not quite sure where Doug is. I think he's somewhere on the Berlin U-Bahn, but I have a very special guest with me today from the Pacific Cast. His name is Henry Nixon. Henry, how are you doing, mate?
I'm really good, thanks, mate. How are you?
Not too bad. I don't think we should lie to one another because previously I told you about having a few beers. So let's just be totally upfront and honest. We've done this before, haven't we? But it got a bit sketchy and we cut out.
Oh, yeah, it was all right. But, we had to start again. Well, there was there were technical difficulties.
Yeah, that's fine. I was just asking you whether or not you were a cricket fan. And you said no.
I'm not a huge cricket fan. I don't really follow the cricket.
There's this brilliant.
I know everyone assumes that if you're Australian, you're a cricket fan.
Yeah, there's this brilliant podcast called The Grade Cricketer. Have you ever heard of it?
Yeah.
I've
heard of it, no.
Oh, it's so good. These two Aussie blokes talking about cricket, but the grade standard. So, like, you know what I mean? Like, just about as good as you can get, and then, you have to give up your job.
Yeah.
It is by far and away my favorite podcast.
So oh, really?
You can listen to it and like not know anything about cricket, and it's still fantastic. The two guys are absolute geniuses and philosophers as well, I might say.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, a lot of Australians think of themselves as philosophers, and they also like to think there's a lot of there's a philosophy of cricket as well. So
yeah.
I mean, I think it is probably a sport that does sort of hold up to philosophical investigation.
Yeah, it does, and being sort of alpha and shouting at really skinny English guys as well.
yeah, so, and we've got a great history of that.
Yeah, you do. So before I get on to all the acting stuff and the World War II stuff and the Pacific stuff and everything, I know you're a leaguey because we had a little chat before. But what's going on with the Aussie rugby union team?
What's going on? Yeah, good question. I have no idea, but I think I sort of do know that rugby league is far more popular, and it's far more popular at a schoolboy level now. No one is really interested in playing it at schools anymore. Certainly compared to countries like South Africa and New Zealand, we just don't have kids playing rugby union at school. In fact, the traditional breeding grounds for rugby union players, which were obviously private schools, those private schools, I guess I think they're public schools in England.
Yeah.
But the traditional breeding grounds for rugby union players are actually becoming breeding grounds for rugby league players now. So that sort of class divide that you used to have between rugby union and rugby league, which was one was the working class sport and the other was the sort of posh sport, that's kind of disappearing now. And the popularity of union, basically there's no grassroots support for union anymore. Kids don't want to play it. They'd rather play league.
Right.
And I never would have thought that would have happened. But I think that is the essential problem with why union is kind of a dying sport in Australia, or just basically why the Wallabies aren't that good.
Because I miss you guys. I miss the Wallabies.
Mate, I miss this too. I miss the heyday. I mean, we all do.
Yeah, I miss them. I miss them a lot. So yeah, we'll leave that because I can feel most
Oh,
of
we could do a whole podcast about that,
but
matey.
I can feel our listenership just drifting off.
Yeah, they're like rugby. What?
Belgian girls that are into World War II. I'm really
Yeah,
um, I want to ask you about the acting scene in Oz,
yeah,
because it feels like you've got the sort of TV equivalent of like repertory theatre there. It feels like there's a lot of like soaps and like sort of slightly long running dramas that have these like guys that go into it. They're in there for a few years, and then suddenly they're in Hollywood. Do you know what I mean? Like it seems like a really good breeding ground for excellent actors. The TV scene and all.
yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I think the landscape has changed a bit. In terms of the long running soaps, we've only really got two now, and that's Home and Away and Neighbours, which sort of died and now has come back, I think, on Amazon. But they're kind of the only kind of breeding grounds. Well, they're kind of training grounds, really. And I think Margot Robbie came from Neighbours, and Chris Hemsworth came from Home and Away. And I know Heath Ledger did some time on Home and Away. I've only been on Home and Away one time. Yeah, Heath Ledger, was on Home and Away. I think he got one of the lead characters pregnant or something in the show, not in real life. And that was a few years back though. But yeah, I think yes, they are sort of breeding grounds for, I guess, Hollywood actors. Although someone like Jacob Elordi never worked here. I think he just went straight to America.
Right.
And I think that is something that's happening more and more. Australian actors are just going. They're bypassing even drama schools. They might do a bit of time on a soap or something, and then they'll just go straight to America. Just cash in the chips and just go there and just try and get a career, or try and start a career as early as possible. Which is kind of what in a way, it's a pretty smart move because it takes so long to get a career going in America, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah, I mean, it used to just be like sort of posh English people who went over to LA and played sort of people who wore a lot of scarves and had a bookshop in Trafalgar Square.
Yeah. Is that still sort of a thing? Because I notice a lot of the Brits who kind of have success over there are kind of Eton boys.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because they can sort of like play that niche. And then for a while, we sort of had like a bunch of Irish boys go over there and, and kick ass.
Oh yeah, it's good to see. It's good to see. I don't want to say the Paddies doing well, but it's good to see the Irish boys doing well. And I'm actually a big fan of the Irish rugby union team, and they still can't beat that World Cup hoodoo, can they?
Well, as my father is Welsh and Leighton is Welsh, I take no joy in that.
Yeah.
Well, I take a lot of joy in that, but I'm not going to talk about it. But it feels now that like there's a lot of extremely good Aussie actors in LA. There's a lot of extremely good Aussie actors in stuff.
And
I don't know. I don't know whether it's just like a cyclical thing where you just get like a whole bunch of people who have this like talent and then they go over and they make a name for themselves. But is there something in the Aussie psyche that makes a really good actor? I mean, other than the fact that you will look great, is it like a work ethic thing? Is it like a no bullshit thing? You don't let crap get in the way. You just do the stuff.
Yeah, I think it is that. It is that because we don't like. There's no such thing as a star system in Australia,
right?
And when you're on a set, it's kind of like it's sort of more egalitarian in a way. I guess we don't have strong unions that sort of get in the way or something in a weird way, or I don't know, which isn't necessarily a good thing. But there's this thing where you're kind of mucking in with everyone, and there's a sense that, and you don't get like the massive trailers or anything like that. You get maybe just like half a double banger, and which is what it was like on the Pacific. But we're all used to that, and and you're just sort of mucking in with everyone else. I mean, I don't know. It's just a sense of kind of also like we work really fast here, so you have to kind of get. You don't really get the luxury of, because there's not as much money. You don't have as much time. You got to kind of do the work. You got to be prepared, and you've got to nail it in a couple of takes. That's just what you're used to, really. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just that practical kind of pragmatic approach to things where you've got to get things done real quick. You can't screw around. You know what I
Right.
mean? And I think that maybe we sort of bring that to the table overseas. Just being used to kind of working fast under not necessarily very nice conditions.
And a profound lack of self-consciousness.
Yeah, I think so. I think there probably is a bit of that. We like a beer.
Yeah.
We're a pretty social culture. There's all that kind of thing. We're pretty open. We're generally pretty friendly, and I think we're pretty grateful for opportunities. Um, yeah, which I guess translates pretty well overseas.
Yeah, especially in LA, I think.
Yeah, and I think we're generally pretty warm and pretty
Mhm.
friendly people. So yeah, I think that does translate well overseas. But for all the really great actors that are over there, and all the ones that are, for all the ones that are over there that are having success and that are really, really talented, there's also a whole bunch of others that are just, there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
That's
mean, for the one or two that are like the Margot Robbies and the what have yous, there's 15, 20, 30, 40 who are
still working in the back bar up in Beverly Hills somewhere.
yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, same with the English guys as well. Yeah, definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
because I think there was this thing, there was that thing like if you because I remember like, I've spent a bit of time over there and like I've been there for a bit, but when I was there last time, well, I remember when I, sort of being over there 10 years ago or whatever, like all you'd hear was like, oh, they love Australians, they love Australians. And I think that kind of they love Australians over here. And I think that kind of planted this incepted this idea with a lot of Australian actors. If I just go over there, then I'll just get success. And
Right.
and maybe I think maybe a few too many Australians went over there. I don't know if we're that much of a novelty anymore, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I think there's a cycle of it. I think there was like Brit actors in like the early 2000s,
Yeah.
and then the
Well,
next
I remember
decade,
when Chris Hemsworth got Thor,
yeah,
um, all the casting agents were looking for the next 6'3" blonde Australian.
right. And what were you doing at this point then?
I was as a 5'9", pale, dark-haired Australian sort of stocky guy. I was not even, I couldn't get arrested.
I feel like you'd have just slapped on a wig. I think you'd have done fine.
Yeah, if I'd slapped on maybe a wig and put on some platform shoes.
Hello, I'm Chris Helmsworth.
and really deep in my
really,
voice.
really deep in the voice. Yeah, hello, mate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um,
And
so
lots
we,
of, and sort of and really shredded up.
yeah, proper shred, like
To
proper.
do that, you got to stop drinking beer, man, and it's and bread, and you got to stop eating. You got to stop eating pasta, and I love all those things. So
Yeah, it's garbage. No one wants to. What's up with him? How's he able to do that? How's he able to do that and still smile? I could just shoot
I
myself.
know, yeah, I know. I just read something on Instagram of I think Hugh Jackman, another great Australian export. I
Yeah,
love Hugh
yeah,
Jackman,
as
but
well.
he just talked about finishing up on. I think he was talking about finishing up on Wolverine and for 6 months, 6 months of eating steamed fish and vegetables. I mean, that's got to do your head in, right?
Yeah, that's not worth it. I don't care. Look at when anybody says it's not worth it. Steamed fish.
Yeah, it probably isn't, is it? I mean, and that's why I'm not Wolverine.
Yeah, that's kind of worth.
It's like not prepared to make that sacrifice, Matty.
No, otherwise I'd be Wolverine. Um,
Hmm.
so how long have you been cracking at it before they came knocking on your door for Pacific?
I went to drama school. I've been out of drama school. I graduated from drama school 2000. So I've been cracking at it 6 years, 7 years, I guess.
Okay. Um,
Yeah, it's
and
because
was it,
that was 2007.
yeah, and was it all in Oz?
It was all in Oz, yeah. Apart from, I mean, my experience was, I mean, I had a great experience with. It was like one of those crazy sort of dream sort of experiences with the audition process.
Yeah, yeah, crack on,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, um, I so they're doing this show. It's the sequel to Band of Brothers or whatever, and same team and all that sort of stuff. And you're like, well, that's exciting. So I get an audition for the Lecky role. And I'm like, oh, yeah, well, I think I could probably do this. This seems like a pretty good role. So I had my initial audition and I went into Fox Studios to do the audition. And I think Tony Toe was there, and Tony Toe was there, and there was another guy. His name escapes me right now.
Was it Gary?
He's one of the producers with a similar name to a famous Hollywood actor. What was his name? He produced Rome.
Was it Sorry? Gary Gertzman?
No, not Gary. Or was it Gary? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Anyway, they were there, and there was someone else, and the casting agent, and I did the audition, and I just, as often happens with me, I was really, really unprepared, and I didn't do a particularly good audition. It was sort of all right, but it was sort of not that great. Then I went home and kind of thought, oh well, c'est la vie. Maybe I probably botched that, but whatever. And then I got a call from my agent saying, look, they liked what they saw. They want you to come back in tomorrow. They think you can do a better audition. So like, I mean, yeah, like a dream kind of thing. It's just like, they just think you didn't really live up to your potential. So I went back in the next day and I actually did a really good audition. They were really, really happy with it. Then I didn't hear anything, obviously, for like months and months, as you do. Just one sec. My girlfriend's coming back home from yoga. Hey, I'm just on Zoom. That's okay. Sorry, I actually didn't tell her. So she's probably just going to walk.
Aussie moment. It was a very Aussie moment. I'm coming back from yoga. Just give me a second. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a yoga mat and a yoga clothes and stuff. She's going to walk past the screen, but this is a podcast, so yeah. So then I didn't hear anything for ages. Then they said we want you to come in and audition for another couple of roles. Right. Like a few weeks later. So I went in for Haldane, Akak.
Okay.
Which of course the lovely and amazing and tall and handsome Scott Gibson played. And the role that I eventually got, I auditioned for Second Lieutenant Hugh Corrigan. So I went in and I put auditions down for both of those roles. Then I didn't hear anything again. And then I got the call that they want to fly you to LA. This is a couple of weeks later. They want to fly you to LA to audition for Spielberg and Hanks at Playtone in Santa Monica.
Cool. No pressure there. No.
Yeah, no pressure. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, okay, and we're gonna fly you over there, and we're gonna give you the 10 scripts of the whole series to read. You've got to come into the office and read them. So I went in and I read these 10 Pacific scripts, which was like reading a great work of literature.
Right.
They were incredible, these scripts. The detail was astonishing, right? I mean, what the show ended up being was they stripped it all back and they stripped out a lot of that stuff. I mean, you just of course, that's just the way it goes so often with these things. But so I read these scripts and I was like, they were incredible. They were really amazing. So, obviously I was pretty excited, and it did add to the pressure. Flew over to the States, auditioned for Tom and Stephen. Which was a crazy experience as well. And all that, I remember John Bernthal was there, and I think John Sater was there. John Sater was wearing full combat gear, as I recall.
A little presumptuous, but go on.
Yeah, yeah. And there was another guy, Val Lauren, who was also auditioning for the role. And I've got a bit of a story about him later. He was auditioning for the role of Barcelona as well. Anyway, so those are the guys. They were going. So your John Saters and your John Bernthals, they were going for like the Barcelona role, and I was auditioning for the Lecky role. And I met Jacob Pitts there as well. But I think it's just one of those things. They get you to do the Lecky scenes, and then they kind of like, they're the scenes they used to audition, and then they sort of cast you in other roles from that. Anyway, look, I ended up getting cast as Corrigan, and obviously, yeah, and I kind of got the role that I thought that I would get eventually, anyway. But yeah, I mean, it was one of those experiences where, like, it was my first experience in the auditioning in the States, and my agent kept saying, when you walk into the room, you have to be American, you have to do an American accent,
right?
And of course, the door opens, right? The sliding door opens as I'm about to go in for the audition, and who's standing in front of me but Steven Spielberg. So of course my knees go to jelly and my mind goes blank. And he says, "Hello, I'm Steven," offers his hand. And I shake his hand and I'm just like, all of a sudden I'm like, Australian Henry, I may as well have like a fucking hat with corks hanging off it. I'm like, "G'day, g'day, mate, I'm Henry. How are you?" May as well be like riding a kangaroo. And then I've got to recoil and kind of regather myself and sort of do an American, and so go into my American persona,
Right.
because they've flown you in, but they haven't told anyone where you're from or anything. It's that age old thing where they're like, if you go in as Australian, then they're just going to be listening for the accent. You know what I mean? So I've got to regather, then I've got to do the audition, and Spielberg is like, there's all these people. You know what it's like with these big auditions when it's like a producer session or whatever. Hanks is at one end, Spielberg's at the other end, and there's like 20 people all watching you, and then there's the reader. And Spielberg was filming the audition. He had a little HD cam. He's the guy operating the camera. Spielberg is operating the camera for the audition. Whether he was even recording, I don't know. But I think apparently that's his way. That was his way of seeming inconspicuous. So yeah. But there were 4 audition scenes and I did 3. And then Stephen was like, I remember Stephen was like, "Okay, all right, should we get the next guy in?" And they were all like, "Stephen, no, there's 4 audition scenes. There's 4 scenes he needs to do." And he's like, "Oh, okay." So I was like, all right, well, maybe Stephen's not the biggest fan of me for Lecky, but yeah. But I did the audition and then finished it all up, and I felt it went pretty well. And then Tom Hanks, who is a very warm, generous, big personality, was like, "Okay, we're going to put all the auditions on YouTube, and then we're going to see which one gets the most hits, and then we'll decide from that." And everyone laughed and everything. And then he gave me a big hug, big bear hug. So yeah, he was a very, very warm figure, Tom Hanks.
Yeah, no, he very much is, isn't he? And so then, were you back in Oz when you found out that you had the role, or are you still in LA? Or?
No, I was in LA because then I spent 2 months doing the what they call, I guess, the water bottle and couch tour, when you meet all the agents and everything and managers. Yeah. I was back in 2007, so like, I mean, I wanted to go back home, but my agent was like, "No, you've got to stay in LA and take meetings," So yeah, I stayed there for 2 months and took meetings and did stuff, which was fun.
Do you remember when you got the call?
Yeah, it was a couple of weeks later, I think it was. I mean, I was kind of like, I think that went well. I felt like it went pretty well, but I thought that I would get Corrigan. I didn't think that I would get the Lecky role. Yeah, and of course, Badge is perfect for that role. So
yeah,
I mean, Badge is a legend. Badge is the nicest guy.
Yeah, we had Badge on. We did like a Zoom sort of event with some of the Pacific guys, and sort of there's like John Sader was on it, and a whole bunch of guys. Gibson was on it, and it just suddenly Badge just appeared on some farm in like Montana with like a bison skull over his head where he'd like nailed it to a wall, and I was like, "Hey, Badge."
Yeah, that sounds like Badge. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, they're all great guys, They're all those guys. The whole cast of the Pacific are legends, pretty much.
How'd you get on with Jacob Pitts?
Yeah, pretty well. I mean, yeah, I got along well with Jacob. Yeah.
We did this kind of like Zoom reunion thing that I just mentioned there, and a bunch of the Pacific guys on, and Gibson had put these like guys together to come on, and he hadn't told me Jacob Pitts was coming on. And
okay.
It was going to be like an hour and a half, all these questions figured out, and suddenly Jacob Pitts pops up on the screen, and I literally have the biggest man crush on Jacob Pitts.
Well, he's a handsome guy.
He's a handsome guy, but he's just fucking brilliant as well.
He's a great mind too.
Yeah, brilliant. Justified, I love him. Justified. I was completely thrown off for the entire thing. I just kept thinking,
yeah,
that's Jacob.
Great guy, really good guitar player.
Really?
Yeah. Cool. And I think he lives in Prague now or something. I think he married like a.
He did.
He married a Czech girl.
He married a Czech girl. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
good for him. So,
Prague.
Prague.
Mm.
we have this sort of
Prague.
like, there's no rivalry between the band and the Pacific cast other than the boot camp.
Okay, yeah. Look, but yeah, what about the boot camp? Because our boot camp was crazy.
Yeah, it's going to come to fists as to whose boot camp was worse. So
Yeah.
talk boot camp experience. I mean, I loved boot camp. I mean, I come from a military
Man,
family.
I got to say, the boot camp for me was the highlight of the whole experience.
I absolutely loved boot camp. I mean, I go
Yeah,
back.
I loved it. I loved it because it was such a challenge, and
Yeah.
they put me in a position of responsibility that I'd never had before in my life,
Mm-hmm.
because I was leading a battalion of like 33 guys, and I know it's pretend and everything, but the thing about
it's not when you're there. It's not pretend.
It's not when you're there. You because they make it so like they make everything seem so it's as authentic as possible, right? So if you're someone with a bit of imagination, as actors are, you make leaps. You kind of, it becomes real.
Yeah.
And I remember lying in my tent, and we used to sleep in our tents with our weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember lying in my tent, or my hooch is what it was, what we called it. But around day 3 it was a 2-week boot camp in the jungle. And I just remember thinking, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. And I just don't know how I'm going to get through it. But the thing is, like, I got through it, man, and like, I felt such a sense of achievement at the end of that boot camp.
We had, we had Donnie Wahlberg and Neil McDonough on, and they were talking, and they were saying, like, do you remember, like, I leaned over to you at one point and I said, I don't know how we're going to get through this. Like, I'm absolutely exhausted. I don't know how I'm going to get through this.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
11 o'clock on day 1. Just 2 weeks to go.
So intense, wasn't it? I mean, like, and because we were out in the Daintree jungle doing it, and we could hear the Japanese. There was a Japanese boot camp as well, and they had the Japanese boot camp happening within earshot, but you couldn't see it, but you could hear them doing the drills, so you could hear the enemy, right? Which, I mean, the psychological kind of games that they would play.
Yeah.
It was mental, right? And the thing is, like, they do things like
games, isn't it?
The Japanese boot camp would attack our camp randomly. There was this one night where I had to lead a patrol out into the jungle, and I don't know if you've ever been in the jungle in the middle of the night, but it's like, it's so dark, you literally can't see 30 centimeters in front of your face. So they were like, okay, we need you to lead a patrol out into the jungle. Dale Dye's like, you go out to this point, you lay chili for 30 minutes. It's like, all that sort of jargon that the Marines and like military people use. It's so funny, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have no idea what you're talking about. But so I led this patrol into the jungle, like in the middle of the night, and it was completely dark. And then when we were out in the jungle, they staged an attack, right? The Japanese were attacking the camp, so we had to get back to the camp to help out, to defend the camp. So I'm like, okay, well, we got to get back. So we take a shortcut. Everyone goes into this like crazy nest of like stinger plants, right? You're out in the jungle and there's like, crazy nature everywhere. So we come back and everyone's got all these stingers and nettles in them that they've got to like get removed. And it was all, and by the time we got back to the camp, the attack had finished. But, just stuff like this, man, like, it was just like crazy. Like, you're out there playing war, and, it was just sort of a really crazy magical time, and a little bit kind of like Lord of the Flies, though.
It's very much Lord of the Flies. It's funny because I don't know if you've seen the Platoon documentary, the Paul Sanchez.
I haven't seen that. Yeah.
I mean, we're talking in the 80s, and when Dale Dye did his first boot camp, and like, nothing has changed. Like, Willem Dafoe on that boot camp ended up drinking some water that was like, he suddenly looked upstream and there's like a rotting bison in it, and he ends up getting some type of dengue fever from it.
He'd be vomiting up black, Yeah,
they said, "Hey, you're the medic, man. You sort him out." And he's like feverish and sweating. It's how anybody's not died. I don't know.
Oh, dude, I honestly, like, I was like, I don't know how people, I don't know people how people don't die on those boot camps. Yeah, I know that Ian Meadows is another actor who was on our show, Australian guy. I think Ian, who's just like really sort of stoic. Um, he I think he broke a rib or two or
Okay.
something, and he was like, he didn't tell anyone. He just sort of got on with it, you know. But and just did the whole thing, and then went home and whatever. But yeah, but I agree. Like, I don't know how there haven't been like fatalities.
Because like on our boot camp, like I mean, Dale Dye was given a free range, but it was very much sort of like yeah, it was the the European theatre operations and all that stuff. But he's a
Yeah,
Marine, so
yeah.
he was given the Pacific.
And the Marines are very particular.
They are
Yeah,
a
they're
particular
yeah.
brand of humour.
The Marines are a very particular bunch. Yeah,
They are.
um,
So, do you
and
feel
the
like
cut was
yeah, he was
yeah,
really giving some for that because I think he was like, all right, okay, this is like my thing now, and he
yeah,
just
yeah,
really
yeah, he was. Yeah, and I think he also sort of Dale. I think Dale. It was a much more. I think much more of a personal project for
yeah.
Dale the Pacific because of his experience with the Marines. Yeah, and I think he sort of was sort of angling towards kind of. I think maybe hoping to direct an episode or sort of have a bit more involvement from the production point of view. Um, we went straight from the end of boot camp. There was supposed to be a couple of days. They changed the schedule, but there was supposed to be a couple of days between the end of boot camp and when we first started shooting. But it ended up being that we finished the boot camp, and then and the boot camp culminated in a beach landing.
Okay.
Um, so we had to do like we did the beach landing, and then we sort of had to kind of attack the beachhead, which was, I mean, the whole thing is just it's mental, isn't it? Like,
It's
and no expense is spared. No expense is spared. You are essentially playing war as if it's completely real. But the next day after that was the first day of shooting, and honestly, I've never been on. It felt like it was. We just literally went into shooting, and it was actually really kind of disorganized. And it kind of, after that first day of shooting, I kind of went home and talked to some of the guys who weren't shooting, and they were like, "What was it like?" And I said, I remember saying it felt a bit like the most expensive student film ever made. You know,
I
it,
know exactly what you mean. I
you know
think
what I mean?
no, exactly. I
Yeah,
think the first episode of Band of Brothers, we spent 4 weeks shooting that, and I don't think
yeah,
there's hardly any of it in the actual first episode. We reshot the whole thing. It's exactly
yes,
just described, man. It felt like the biggest budget student movie. Who knows what they're doing? We're just winging it.
yeah,
Madness.
yeah,
And I was like,
absolutely. And
does
and I
anyone
remember it was like
storyboard? Does anyone know what they're doing?
no one knew what they were doing, and the director didn't really. I think Tim Van Patten was directing, but he didn't really think. I don't know. He was a bit at sea, and the first AD was kind of. I remember I think I did the first scene on the first day of shooting, and it's a scene in that first episode where we walk up to the jungle wall, and we're about to go into the jungle, and I've got to take an azimuth, and we don't really know what we're doing. I mean, I guess it kind of helped because we're kind of at sea as the characters and everything. But I remember like I had to go up and take an azimuth and sort of say we need to go in here or whatever. And I remember getting a direction. I got a direction from Tim Van Patten to do it a certain way. Then Dale Dye gave me a direction to do it a certain way. And then the first AD gave me a direction to do it a certain way. And they all gave me conflicting direction. Like one guy was like, just throw it away. Dale Dye was like, no, you have to do it like this, and then the other guy said something else. Tim said something else. But I was just like, okay, who's the director here? I don't know who's running this show. It was insane. Like, honestly, it was mayhem. And I thought, well, I remember thinking, I don't know if this bodes particularly well, but it's really good to know that that's the same thing happened on Band.
100%. And in the first episode,
Yeah.
100%, it was a bit like, what on earth are we all doing? And actually,
Yeah.
none of it made the final cut. Like about 3 minutes of it made the final cut. By the time we
Yeah.
got 4 or 5, we started totally reshooting episode 1, completely
Yeah.
reshooting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we also had the writer's strike. um,
Yeah. Yeah.
which hit us in the basically at the beginning of shooting. So we couldn't. I think the writer strike happened throughout, like for the whole series. So there were no rewrites. There were none of the writers were allowed to do rewrites. And I remember we used to get rewrites of scenes from Tom Hanks. I remember he would write a scene and send it down the pipe, and we'd get it. And often the scenes that Tom would write were kind of like they had a bit of a comedic bent. Often, I was like kind of like, oh yeah, Tom's sort of returning to his roots,
Tom's going full money pit on this one. Nice one.
Yeah, money pit. Yeah, the Burbs.
Yeah, the Burbs.
Yeah.
Probably grasping the seriousness of the situation here. I'm not sure.
He's like, well, you know what? I think the show needs some comedy, needs some levity. Yeah.
Like somebody falling in a hole and everybody laughs and
yeah.
So
yeah, but so it was pretty crazy, man. I think the show did kind of it did sort of. I don't know if the word is suffer, but it kind of there was an obstacle that we had to kind of overcome, was the fact that we couldn't really get any rewrites from any of the writers, and
big deal. It's a big deal because with an ensemble cast that big, out so much. I mean, we had blue pages, pink pages, green pages, like every day they would just try to figure it all out.
As you always do whenever you're doing something, like rewrites are constantly happening.
Yeah. And if you've got
so we did have to end up reshooting a lot of that stuff, particularly that second episode stuff. We reshot it in LA actually.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of that Guadalcanal. The first episode, Alligator Creek stuff, we did have to reshoot a little bit of that. I think we shot, and some of the Guadalcanal stuff we shot at like Disney Ranch, like in Malibu.
No way, really?
Yeah, and then some of the other stuff was on a soundstage at Sony Studios in Culver City. So yeah, but yeah, I think there were quite a few reshoots that we had to do.
That's incredible.
Which was good for me because I got to sort of bulk up my character a bit.
Yeah. And hang out in LA.
Yeah, and hang out in LA again, yeah.
Brilliant.
Which is always fun.
So when we had some of the Pacific guys on, you could duck this completely, or we can edit it out. It doesn't matter. It's entirely up to you. There was this massive elephant in the room about Barcelona character.
Oh, okay. And did no one discuss it?
Honestly, it was like the Brady Bunch, when they're all in their little squares and then they were all looking at each other like, I'm not saying anything, I'm not saying anything, I'm not saying anything. They were all
it could look, I don't know. The thing is, I don't know if it's an interesting thing. No one wanted to talk about it, right?
No, I mean, John Sader, gosh bless him, he spoke about it a little bit. But basically all I can glean is that when he went to boot camp, a certain actor was playing Jean Barcelone, and by the time then he went into filming, it wasn't the same actor, it was John Sader, and I'm not quite sure what happened there.
Yeah, I mean, and so no one kind of said anything. I mean, am I going to be the one that, I don't know, is it kind of, if I don't know, is it kind of not incriminating, but is it what's the word?
How keen are you to cancel yourself? That's what I'm saying.
Would this cancel me though?
I don't think so. I mean,
it's so long after the fact now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And just tell us what.
I mean, it was 2007.
Yeah, tell us what you know, and we can.
Well, what I do know is that there was another actor cast in the role of Barcelone when we went to boot camp.
Right.
And what I do know is that on that first day of boot camp, I remember seeing a car driving up along the dirt track up to where the camp was, and then I remember seeing a certain producer, or maybe it was just one of the producers, get out of the car and summon a certain actor over to them.
And with the producer, if I did this, hang on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And he summoned him over in front, and it was kind of a, I don't know if it was for the benefit of everybody. It wasn't something that sort of happened in a discreet way.
Right.
It's certainly something that happened in front of everyone, and everyone could see what was going on. And so this certain actor was sort of told to come over and have a chat to this certain producer, and they chatted. And then the next minute, this actor was in the car driving away,
Whoa.
never to be seen again. At
All
least
right.
not on the set of the Pacific. And I do remember thinking, oh, kind of like a child, sort of like looking, going, what happened? What happened to ... And then John Sater was playing that role.
Right. You've definitely not been
But
criminal.
I remember that event
Yeah.
did strike sort of fear into my heart, because I remember thinking, oh, well, we could just all just lose our jobs at any minute, you know.
Right, you've definitely not
And,
incriminated yourself, because that's exactly what everybody else said. But between about 16 of them, they all sort of added a sentence here and a sentence there.
yeah,
Then
yeah.
I
Oh,
think,
good. Yeah, good. Yeah. I mean, I just remember thinking, well, I better work really, really hard,
so.
and take this really, really seriously, and do the best I possibly can, because at the end of the day, I mean, it seems like I'm pretty disposable, or replaceable.
I posed this
Um,
question to them
yeah.
after, to John and Jacob and the guys that were on there, and I said, "Is there any chance? Do you think that that was a deliberate plant and a deliberate maneuver?"
Well, that's funny, because, like, the conspiracy part of your brain does kind of go, was this a deliberate move? To to kind of like, was this a psychological play? Because it wasn't discreet.
No, right.
It was sort of in front of everyone. It was it was for everyone to see. So I don't know, man. Like, was it a psychological ploy? If it was, it worked.
Because they kind
It
of
worked
did it.
for
I
me.
mean, they did it on Private Ryan, where they wouldn't let Matt Damon go on the boot camp, and everyone hated him.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
yeah, and then they did
Yeah.
something similar with David Schwimmer with us on our boot camp. They just he suddenly disappeared for a few days. Apparently, it was like a med
Yeah.
thing or something. And then by the time everything got easy on the boot camp, he was back again, so that we all hated him. I mean, that's
Yeah.
pretty harsh. I mean,
Yeah.
it was pretty harsh. But if it was a
It's pretty
deliberate,
hard. Deliberate ploy. Look, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a deliberate ploy, or maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just, that was just the easiest way to do it. You
yeah,
know, but it was definitely something that it did affect me. I will say, and because, like, you're so vulnerable out there.
yeah.
We're out in this we're sort of out essentially in the wilderness.
It's weird for me as a fan of the show, because
Yeah.
I have to think to myself, that's got to have been a deliberate ploy. No one else could have played Baslow except John Sater. He was just so good. So I don't know.
So good.
Mm.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Oh, look, I do look. Look, chatting to the look. I did chat to the cadre of Marines about it a bit, and I remember, um, you know, um, I think maybe some of the, I don't know. Look, who knows? But, like, I think some of the, and the Marines are a very particular sort of group of people. But I remember them sort of thinking, I think they thought maybe this particular actor wasn't right or something, or I think they took exception to this particular actor, because the thing is, like, if you're actors playing these kind of, particularly someone like Barcelona, who is such a legend
mm-hmm.
in the Marine Corps, it's like that casting has to be kind of right, doesn't it? I mean, it's, well, I mean, all the casting needs to be right, but someone like Barcelona, who is, like your Barcelones, your chesty pullers, they're like these huge figures in the Marine Corps, in Marine Corps history. They're just like, they're just out and out heroes. So you got it, you can't blame them for being very particular about who gets cast.
No,
especially for something like Barcelona. Yeah,
um,
they want that. That's right, because he's such a hero. And John, John was right.
yeah, it's wonderful.
John's a legend. He's such a nice guy. Like, he's so down to earth and kind of, he's so not Hollywood at all.
Yeah, I know. He strikes me as, well, it doesn't strike me as someone, and I felt it very deeply inside of me. Interviewing him, I really want to
Yeah,
punch him in the face for being so handsome, talented, and like humble. Those three things don't go together. Like
yeah,
be two of those things,
yeah,
but
yeah,
don't be all three. And don't be interviewed with like your guitars in the background because like you and your muscles out and all that stuff, and you tan and you're
yeah,
like 20.
yeah. And he still looks like he's 25.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to wrap one of those acoustic guitars around his head. Honestly,
Did he didn't pull out the guitar and like play a few tunes, did he?
no, but he was in the background. Like he was there with like his muscle top on. Like
I
you
had his
know,
muscles off. Yeah, 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 yeah,
and
yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
whether my little girl came in and he was just big,
yeah, yeah.
as
Beautiful
well.
kids, and
Yeah,
he probably just been out for a ride in his Harley.
yeah, exactly. And he just like cured some orphan of a disease as well. And I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
probably. Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah. Saved a cat.
saved the
Um, yeah. Saved the cat from burning house along with her grandmother. Yeah. Like, he
yeah,
just, but that's the thing. The thing is, like, John has that sort of ease and charm and kind of natural heroism about him.
he really does. And then he's like feeding the
Yeah.
cat with his own teat for a while whilst we were
Yeah.
talking.
Yeah. 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 He can breastfeed cats. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He can lactate
Yeah.
the cats as well.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
nothing man
Yeah.
can't do.
He wrote half the Beatles back catalogue. He wrote Love Me Do. Yeah. Yeah.
Hope we do. COVID
Yeah.
vaccine came up with that. Absolutely
Came up
fantastic.
with COVID vaccine. Yeah. 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 He did. He came up with it.
It
Yeah.
is the blue button anyway.
At the end of the day, he deserved to play John Bassett.
No, absolutely wonderful, wonderful actor.
Yeah.
On a slightly different bent,
Mm.
and he's a man of your nation. Please,
Uh-huh.
can you give me a Gunny Haney story, please?
Gary Sweet.
Yeah, like he strikes me as someone like I would like to party with. I don't know. Am I wrong? Am I right?
Yeah. Well, Gazza Sweet is a legend of the Australian film and television industry. I mean, that's the thing, right? Oh man, he on boot camp, he was not taking any of the bullshit. Can I say shit? Can I say bullshit? I probably can. Anyway, yeah. I think things get beeped out so much. But look, Gary Sweet was on boot camp was amazing because he was just like, the Marines would like tell him to something, like they'd give him an order and he'd tell him to fuck off, And I was just like, fuck, man. Like, I was like, fuck, take it easy, mate. You might lose your job. He didn't care. He did not care, which is like perfect for that role, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he was like beating them at their own game, essentially. Yeah, he just didn't give a fuck. Like, but here's the thing is like Gary, Gary was, I guess he was probably in his 50s then. He's just seen it all before,
Right.
He's like kind of an old, like Gary's like he's a different generation of Australian actors, which are just genuinely like larrikins, you know what I mean? Larrikins, big drinkers, I mean, I'm sure he wouldn't mind if I said, womanizers, just blokes and just charming, I mean, Gary's like he was an established sort of TV star and sort of Aussie legend here. So yeah, I mean, like, great to have him around, man. He's great to have him around on set because he just didn't care. And the thing is, like, I get it now, just because he's seen it all before, he didn't care, But yeah, I mean, what do you want some Gary Sweet stories? I mean,
yes,
God, it was such a long time ago.
Particularly, I would like naked Gary Sweet stories. I feel like he embraced that naked moment, like with
Yeah. I heard a funny story. I heard a funny story about one of the extras on that.
Oh yes, please.
One of the naked extras in that scene.
Yeah.
Apparently, one of the I don't know if this is true or not, and I don't know who this naked extra was, but he's an extra who does nudity, right? You know how there's some extras that specialize in nudity.
Yeah.
I think they had a guy because they were like, well, we need extras, we need some nude extras. So this guy, is on the books as the nude extra guy. he came up and they're like, okay, this is the bit where you get nude, gets his clothes off. Apparently his penis was so ridiculously big that in post they were like, well, that looks too ridiculous. We need to make it smaller. So they had to make it smaller in post. Because the producers were like, well, no one's going to believe this. It's too big. Too big.
So they literally made his penis smaller in post.
This is what I hear. They did some CGI on his penis. I don't know if it might be an apocryphal tale, but I don't know, man. It's a good story if it is,
That is
it's a good story if it's true. And I don't know who this guy was. So.
How much did that cost?
As you know, they have the money.
They do have the money, but still.
Yeah. I mean, that's another thing. It's just like, being like, I mean, even though sort of the best experience, the best experience was the audition process and by far the best experience was the boot camp. Actually, shooting of the show was great too. Although it's just like, if you've been on sets before, it's like, it's like you're on a set, but just like any other set. Although, and apart from that fact that the first couple of days felt like we were on this huge, expensive student film, when we got into it, when you're on those Guadalcanal, Alligator Creek scenes from episode 1, those big battle scenes, the amount, I mean, there was just no expense spared. The amount of money that was spent and probably wasted, it was incredible. I mean, to be shooting sort of television, fast television, which is what those shows are. They're still television at the end of the day. So you don't really have the luxury of film. They're a bit faster than film. Still, like, the scope of the sets and it was pretty extraordinary. It was pretty extraordinary to be on something so big, and not Marvel movie big. Right. Big in the sense that they paid attention to historical details and things, mostly. Yeah.
How did you find those battle scenes? Were you just, did you get into it, or was it just like, this is utter chaos? What on earth is going on?
It was utter chaos. Yeah, I mean, those Alligator Creek scenes were utter chaos. Like, yeah, I mean, you kind of, you're a small cog in a huge machine, and you just sort of, you don't really know how it's going to turn out. So you just got to play your bit as best you can. I'm sure it was like that on Band.
Yeah, absolutely.
The band was much more technical in a weird way than, I mean, certainly those Alligator Creek scenes were kind of, they were just, because the nature of that battle was that, the Japanese were just doing banzai charges and we were just gunning them down, essentially. That was the nature. And that was kind of the one big battle scene that I had. So that was just the nature of that battle. But with Band, it seemed a lot more kind of a technical sort of process, recreating those battles.
Again, with that sort of student film, to finally knowing what we were doing, it didn't start out that way. It felt utterly
really
beginning.
Yeah,
it was just everyone was shooting their rifles and everything was going off. By the time we got to sort of like the bulge attack on Foy and all that stuff, it was very technically done. But the early stuff, because the thing is you're either focusing on Barcelona burning his hand on the 50 cal or 30 cal, where it is, and all that business, but everybody else is just going bonkers with like loads of ammunition everywhere, and you don't even have the cameras on. Your stuff is and like night stuff is so disorientating anyway.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, I didn't have to. I mean, the only night, all that Alligator Creek stuff was at night. But it was just really disorienting. I've actually got this. I've got my this is me. You see that? That's me at Alligator Creek.
Oh no, badass! Yeah, no, that's amazing shot. Look at that.
Yeah, it's a really good shot. I still haven't taken the plastic off this, but it was crazy, man.
If for anybody's listening who doesn't know, what happens is it's like it's dark, and then you start firing, and the muzzle of your weapon just has this huge flash, which just makes kind of like 2D. Like suddenly you can't see past the flash, and it's just like, and then there's shadows here and shadows there, and everything goes kind of weird and disorientated. And you just how am I supposed to hit anything?
I know. And it really gives you the sense of what the chaos of battle is, right?
Absolutely good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know a lot of my friend's grandfather, my friend's father, was at he fought in Papua New Guinea,
Oh, okay.
Against the Japanese in Papua New Guinea, and my friend said, you know, he was like, what was it like, you know, and did you ever, what was it like, fighting against the Japanese? And he said, well, we never saw them, you know. It was just, we never actually saw the enemy. They were there, but we never really saw them, you know. They'd shoot at us, but we never saw them, you know. And that in and of itself is sort of really, really terrifying.
Yeah, no, you're completely shooting shadows. You might see the shadow of a helmet or
Yeah,
something. Absolutely
yeah,
terrifying.
bonkers.
Terrifying.
Yeah, and I just imagine what it would have been like for these guys at Alligator Creek, just to have these crazy Japanese soldiers just running at them, you know, with swords drawn, you know, things like this. Sort of such an insane experience. But yeah, the fog of war, the kind of the craziness of battle, it would be incredibly confusing, wouldn't it, really? And to sort of maintain composure would be, I would imagine, sort of almost impossible. But you just do the best that you can.
Yeah, that's all those fellas were doing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Man.
and it did feel like that, recreating it, actually. You know, you just sort of like, you're there and you're just doing the best you can, and hoping you get some screen time, you know.
Yeah, I remember doing, and particularly we did night attacks at boot camp, and then we did sort of night stuff when we were shooting episode 5 and stuff. And I remember thinking it must be very difficult to be the guy that sort of takes the lead, because like chaos is going on. It's really easy to just sort of shrink down real low and think, right, I'm just going to hide for a while here while everything's chaos. How anybody shoots anybody, I've absolutely no idea.
I've absolutely no idea either. I have absolutely no idea. It's it's crazy to me. I mean, I sort of often think that what would I be like at war? And, you know, I probably actually wouldn't be very good. So
I would be terrible, absolutely terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I've had you for about an hour. I think I might let you go.
It's been great.
It has been great. Is there anything you kind of want to talk about? Like, I sort of just. Oh, there's one thing I wanted to ask you. Actually, this is very important.
Yeah.
Of my notes, because obviously I do the best prep that I can. So anything that you want to plug, you can do in a second. But in and of, I do like that Aussie phrase, in and of itself. I was looking at your. They say a lot of the great cricketers on that podcast. I'll say in and of itself.
In and of itself, yeah, that's such an Aussie kind of like. Well, in and of itself.
I've been in and of itself. I've been nicking that since. One of your wiki posts about you, which you probably didn't write, says that you are a keen skipper, which I broke both my arms falling off a truck. It's an industrial injury, and so I have terrible handwriting. So it actually looks like a keen stripper, which I don't think that's true. Now, what is a skipper? Is it to do with a boat, or is it to do with like bouncing a pebble across the water? I'm not quite sure.
It's to do with jumping rope.
No, isn't it?
Never, but I mean, you know, it's true. You know, I do jump rope, as a form of cardio exercise. But I mean, you know, never trust Wikipedia. Never. Come on, Maddie, you know better than that.
I should. My Wikipedia. Well, actually, a mate of mine changed my Wikipedia. It's fucking hilarious. But mine, for many, many years, said Matthew Leach was born in 1975 and is not gay. That's all it said.
That's a pretty good Wikipedia entry. Because it's true, right? I mean, it's all true, right?
It's partially true.
I'm not going to ask. Don't ask, don't tell.
Exactly.
I'm not going to ask what's true and what isn't.
You inject some cash into that equation. That's going either way. I really don't care.
Yeah. I mean, $20 is $20, or £20 is
£20 is twice $20 for a start.
Well, 20 pounds is actually quite a lot.
Exactly.
It's certainly in Australian money.
Exactly. Is there anything you want to plug? Because I mean, I noticed in your IMDb you're still very busy.
Oh yeah, I mean, nothing I want to plug. I mean, I guess what have I got coming? You know, in terms of what have I got coming out at the moment? Like, what shows have I got coming out? Well, just it's just a show called High Country,
Yeah.
But and I think, look, and I actually think it's going to be. I actually think that they have made sales in your territory there. So
is this like a First Nation story?
Yeah, it sort of kind of is a little bit. Yeah, it is a bit. Yeah, it's certainly sort of alluding. It may be more in a metaphorical sense, but it is essentially sort of a First Nation story. Yeah, yeah. And we've got Ian McElhaney's in it, so he's one of the leads.
I feel like there's so much to tell there still from like the Aussie sort of like cultural perspective. There's so much.
Yeah, well, there are. And there's actually a couple of things which are sort of to do with, and I think High Country is it does allude to the stolen generation a bit, as does this other film, which is just at Sundance, when I've got a cough and a spit in, called The Murgai. But but High Country is certainly sort of deals with, I think, the stolen generation. For those who don't know what that is, it's I don't really want to open up a can of worms because that's a whole other podcast as well. So, but yeah, it is a first. Our lead actor is First Nations. We've got a couple of other First Nations actors in it. It's pretty good in terms of First Nations representation.
That's fucking
great.
But
but essentially it is a thriller and kind of At the end of the day, it's just a thriller, and I think a pretty entertaining kind of show. And Ian McElhaney's in it. You know, Ian, he was. I don't know if you're a Game of Thrones fan, but he was. I think Sir Barristan Selmy in it. In it, he's the guy who gets killed by the ambush in Marine or something, by the Harpies or something. I don't know. I'm not really a Game of Thrones sort of. I don't really know that much about it.
A lot of naked people. You get lost easy with a naked.
A lot of naked people, yeah. Ian also plays Granddad in Dairy Girls, so. Yeah.
Great
he's really good. Yeah, Northern Irish.
Yeah. No, I'm really cool. I'm really glad all this First Nation stuff's coming out of Oz, because there's only so many sort of white dudes in police drama.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good, and absolutely, man. It's really good, and it's really great to be involved in those stories, to be honest, because they are really interesting stories.
Yeah.
You know, the stakes are high, you know. Yeah, exactly. So it's a pleasure to be involved in that stuff. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. But I've got that coming up. But that's going to be here on like it's a Fox show, so it's here. But I think they have made a few international sales. So, and I think the producers didn't tell me, but I think the UK may be one. So yeah,
we love
you'll be able to see it.
We love the Aussie. All right, buddy. Well, I'll let you go. Thank you so much for your time. It's been fantastic.
Matty, it's been great, man. Like, I really appreciate you getting me on the pod, and I hope I didn't say anything controversial or anything get me cancelled or anything.
Absolutely not at all. Honestly, I mean, I'm going to blame it totally on you if there's any blowback. But there you go.
Yeah. It's quick shout out to all the Bounder Brothers and Pacific fans out there, and hope you're all doing well. And I know that we have a sort of a pretty loyal fan base, and looking forward to Masters of the Air, the third installment.
Yeah, fantastic. Really looking forward to it. All those very handsome bastards. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like we were saying before, we were discussing before the podcast that it's by far the most handsome cast.
Yeah, irritatingly so.
Irritatingly, yeah, absolutely.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Matt. Cheers, mate. Have a good one.
Cheers, mate.